What's going on, Rebel Nation? It's your host, Zach Moreth, and I'm back with another episode of the Rebel Talk with your co-host, Daylan Flowers. And today we're going to give you guys a quick overview of what we've seen in spring football. Going to keep it simple, stick to the football side of things. We'll get back to you with more baseball and basketball portal content throughout the week, some more NFL draft content as well. So stay tuned, as always, to our social media, to our YouTube channel. Without further ado, let's get into it, Daylan. But before we get going, man, how are you doing? How's your spring semester been, first and foremost, brother?
Busy, man, but I can't complain. It's been a great time to be around Oxford right now, with the baseball team looking like it's trying to find its groove, getting ready for, postseason play here soon. Softball team's been grooving, men's and women's basketball team, Sweet 16 appearances. It's been a fun time around Oxford, looking and excited for the fall. But I can't complain right now, man. It's been a hectic time, been going on my own show a lot lately, but I'm enjoying the process right now, my brother.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in the blink of an eye, we're looking at double-decker weekend and then 3 weeks here. We're finishing up with school. But a couple of things that we've seen from spring football, I'm going to get into it here. Just with the quarterback room, Jackson Dart is the story of Ole Miss for 3 years here. It seems like he's been here for, as long as we can remember in the Lane Kiffin era. And he's finally leaving, right? He's going to be drafted on Friday, hopefully in the first round that we hope in the NFL. But it's Austin Simmons' time, baby. It's ready to go. Daylan Flowers has an exclusive interview with Austin on our YouTube channel. If you haven't seen, go check it out. It was from last fall, I believe. But, he's looked better than ever, Daylan. We've seen glimpses, right? We saw, flashes of this against Georgia, obviously against the blowouts, even against Duke in that final game. He threw a laser down the field.
Yeah.
Kid's got a cannon. It was said last year he probably had the strongest arm on the team. Obviously not the experience or maybe the skill level yet of Jackson Dart, but that's developed and that's finally come. And, we're going to see it with him. We're going to see it with the guys like Arch Manning who developed and waited their time essentially under really good, strong in veteran quarterbacks. And it's finally here. And I am pumped, dude. But just in the spring, he looked flawless to me. I'm not saying that because I'm a fan, because I'm a student. He truly does bring a different sense of energy to this team. And I think, he's got the potential to be arguably the best quarterback that Lane Kiffin's ever worked with, Daylan.
Yeah, he looks really polished right now, and that speaks a lot of volumes for a guy that has not really seen too much playing time over his career. But I think the added bonus for Austin Simmons is, and even AJ Maddox, as we'll continue to talk about once he gets back healthy, they've been in the system for a few years now. They understand how this offense runs. They understand the mechanics it takes to keep this tempo offense flowing and what it takes to move this ball down the field for this offense. He looks really polished. He looks like he's understanding what the offense needs. Like Zach is just talking about. I think many fans have obviously talked about it, understood his arm is really, really good. It's accurate, it's on point. The deep ball, the middle ball, the short pass ball, it looks to be accurate in every aspect. But for me, what we've seen so far through spring that has caught my eye is his mobility, his mechanics inside the pocket. We kind of knew that Austin could move around a little bit, but we've seen an excessive amount over it throughout the spring ball so far. And he is a more polished runner than Jackson Dart. Jackson kind of was running like a true running back or something, and Jackson kind of invited contact, and I don't think Austin is really running away from him, but I think Austin knows his game a little bit better, and he's kind of a more polished running back that can move really well and has some pretty good speed on him, but understands how to has that baseball experience, has had a baseball slide when needed, and et cetera, et cetera. But he looks really good, and the entire quarterback room is honestly, for the first time that I can remember at the Ole Miss time under Lane Kiffin, it's a bit of a question mark. I know the things are great and Ole Miss fans are excited about Austin Simmons, but we've never seen him play for a full season yet. AJ Maddox has been here. He knows the system like Austin Simmons, but we never really got to see him play yet. We got Pierce Clarkson and this new transfer coming in from, D2 school. So this quarterback room has seen progression over the spring ball, but I think there's still a lot of question marks going into the summer and, of course, the fall as well.
And you said his name, but AJ Maddox, I want to say he broke his hand. It was something with his throwing hand. It looked like a break to me. He was in a sling the last time we got to see media viewing. But Trinidad Chambliss, the Division II transfer, this kid's an absolute monster, Daylan. You look at his film. I think this is a guy we can even see in the Wildcat position. Look, for some reason, sometimes it worked. We had JJ Pegues back there, okay? Yeah. I think we saw how that ended up against Florida. Not great once teams started to figure it out a little bit. So this is a guy He's 6'1", 200 pounds, almost built like a running back. And he rushed for 25 touchdowns and over 1,000 yards. So on those plays where you're looking to protect Austin, I think he's the perfect number 2 option. I think he's going to translate well in Lane Kiffin's system. And I think he's going to make he's not going to come in here and take Austin's spot, but he's a legit QB2, and he's going to compete for that starting job in his mind. So it's going to be good to kind of see the development from him and how it benefits Austin as well. But I talked about the running backs. I want to move into that running back room a little bit. We've seen Logan Diggs come back. Keewaun Lacey looks like he's going to be really versatile in the passing game. And then Shakai Mills-Knight still's got to come in, 6'3", good friend of the show. Shout out Shakai. And then to top it all off, they went and got another portal guy, Damian Taylor, transferring in from Troy. Just your overall thoughts and how important is it going to be for this offense to have ultimately a really good running back room that they can rely on, which I feel like wasn't the case last year.
It's going to be huge, Zach. For me, I've watched the running back room really hard over the spring ball. It was if not the main topic for the team last year. I think the offensive line, the running back room had the two most kind of questionable remarks last year. I feel like there's a lot of pressure on Kevin Smith this year. He has a lot to control and to bring up this year for this 2025 Ole Miss football team. This team has depth at that position, but in my opinion, they had depth last year, but they didn't utilize the depth. So it's all going to be, how do they utilize that depth? You talked about Logan Diggs. He looks extremely good. He looks like he's able to move inside the pocket really well. He's elusive. He's moving well with the ball in his hands. He's protecting the ball really well. And this is an Ole Miss offense. 3 out of the last 4 years, believe it or not, Zach, has finished in the bottom half of the SEC in red zone efficiency. So this is a part of the offense that needs to grow in terms of, can Ole Miss run their set tempo in an efficient way? This is the offense that moves best when they run the ball effectively. We've seen that over the years. When they have an offense that is set and running forward and the run game is effective, then it allows the pass game to open up and run that play action, run those screen plays on the outside that Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin loves to do, but they're not able to do that with an effective running game like we saw struggle so much in 2024. Logan Diggs looks really good. I'm excited about Shakai Mills-Knight as well. He is highly touted, highly anticipated, and I think he brings just a bit of hunger to this running back room that is there, but is a little bit needed and boosted as well. I think this running back room has a lot of depth that I'm excited about. And as well, the guys look hungry. I've seen Kevin Smith kind of have a different drive than I've seen him have over the past couple of years. And I think he understands there's a little bit of pressure on him in his job this year. And so I've watched him closely. This is a running back room that has size. This is a running back team that has speed, has a lot of elusiveness, has the ability to put some receiving yards up as well. So this is a running back room, when utilized correctly, Zach, has the ability to do a lot of different things greatly. And one more thing I want to bring is, they've ran through a lot of pass blocking situations so far in the spring too, which is going to be huge. Again, I mentioned the red zone efficiency and the struggles Ole Miss have had over the last couple of years. That pass blocking by the running back in those tight spaces are huge. And that's whether you want to, set a fade screen and then that running back goes out and then makes it themselves as a receiver. Those are important, especially in that red zone situation. So this running back room has a lot on their shoulders, but I think they're capable of doing great things with the right mindset and the right guys in that room, which I believe they have this year.
And you talk about pass blocking, and the first couple of things that come to mind are just watching Henry Parrish get blown up last year. And the poor guy, he's a smaller type back. We all know Parrish probably shouldn't have been using that in that role. But like Daylan said, it's going to be, where are these guys going to fit, right? In my opinion, Logan Diggs, Damian Taylor, Dominique Thomas, these are 3 dudes who are legit pass blockers.
Yeah.
But if they're not utilized correctly, it doesn't matter. And we saw that last year. Hopefully that isn't the case moving into this fall. There's no repeat of Henry Parrish getting absolutely blown up in this version of the Ole Miss football team. But moving into the wide receiver room, Daylan, I'm going to just say it straight up. I think this wide receiver room has another chance to put 4 receivers over 500 yards, just like they did last year. 1,000%. And going into the portal, I mean, I can't believe I'm even saying this, but they could actually be better than last year's, because I don't think they're going to be force feeding a guy like they were Trey Harris. We saw what happened when Harris went out, which was terrible, obviously, but the offense opened up, and you don't have that proven commodity who was as talented as Trey Harris, in my opinion. You have guys along the level of several guys with the talent caliber of Jordan Watkins, obviously different sizes and speeds, but I don't think there's that number one right now who's this much better than another guy. You know, you got Stribling from Oklahoma State, Trey Wallace from Penn State, Deuce Alexander. He's absolutely head top in these DBs in practice. He's been a great surprise. Caleb Odom from Bama. And then I kind of threw the tight ends into this with Luke Hasz, Daquan Wright, and obviously Caden Lee's returning. So a lot of options here, but just your overall thoughts in the first glance into this room, Dave.
This has been the most exciting portion of the team throughout spring ball for me so far. And it's exciting to see these guys be here. And then I also have to remember that we also have Caleb Cunningham coming at some point throughout the summer as well. You know, this is a great remark for Ole Miss. You have those playmakers that, again, can do a lot of different things. And I thought you made a great point. There's no, I don't think, a reliance on a Trey Harris type guy. I think from their perspective of who's coming back from last year, you look at Caden Lee and Daquan Wright, who we saw play a lot. You know, Caden Lee, especially in those Georgia drives with Austin Simmons, and we even watched Daquan Wright catch a couple touchdowns last year from Austin Simmons. So those seem to be the guys with the most experience here at Ole Miss and have the most capability so far, who, by the way, have looked outstanding. Their hands look great. Their footwork, their feet work and mechanics look great. You know, their end zone catches have looked really well. But this receiving and tight end room looks really good. And staying on, you know, Daquan Wright, Luke Hasz, transfer from Arkansas at the tight end position. I don't know what Ole Miss fans really know what they're getting, but they're getting a guy that can pass block really well, that can catch the play action pass really well, that can go over in the red zone and catch over a DB's head for a touchdown really well. I'm excited about the combination of him and Daquan Wright. They both bring different capabilities to the tight end room that I kind of think, you know, Caden Prescorn did really well, but I think Luke Hasz also does some things really well that Caden Prescorn didn't necessarily do. That will allow some freedom for the wide receivers and Daquan Wright when he's on the field. But this wide receiver room, it looks incredible, Zach. I think for me, standing out, Deshaun Stribling was the key piece in the transfer portal, just his size and his capabilities. And he's looked really well, looked healthy. But Caleb Odom, man, you know, we knew about him, his recruiting process, very close to committing to Ole Miss before committing to Bama a few years ago. Now he's here. He looks really refreshed to be here. He looks really happy to be here, and he's finding his fitting really well in this offense. And for me, that is a big confidence piece for me for this offense in 2025. I think he's a guy that has the ability to be a superstar, but really wasn't given the chances, if ever, at Alabama last year. And I think now he's at a place where he's understanding his role highly. The coaching staff knows his capabilities, and he has the size to, you know, be in the slot, be on the outside, be a red zone threat as well. So Caleb Odom has looked really nice. And you mentioned Deuce Alexander. I knew he was good, but his capabilities so far through the spring have been exceeding my expectations. Very quick. He's also been in, you know, in the mix of the special team, so we may see him as a kickoff and punt returner in the 2025 season. He's looked really good there, but a very quick guy, great route runner, great hands, and like Zach mentioned, has went over some DB's heads in the end zone so far and caught a couple, you know, Randy Moss's touchdowns so far. And it's been incredible. You know, for his size, you wouldn't think he's able to do that, but he has a big playmaking ability. And I'm excited for it. There's so many pieces on this wide receiver room that I think fans need to be excited about. But it also goes back to what I talked about the running back room, which you just mentioned. Can this offense utilize all these guys? You know, you can have such a great room, but how do you continue to get the ball to all these guys? And it can happen, but will it happen? And so far, we've seen a great spread of the offense and the utilization of the different receivers and tight ends. So I'm capable of it happening. But when that game time happens, the game is just a lot different than practice and scrimmages. When that game time happens, does it really match up? I'm hoping it will. And so far, this Ole Miss wide receiver room, for me, looks like the best portion of this Ole Miss football team so far.
Without question. And like you said, Daylan, I mean, last year, I went on Stephen Wilsh's show throughout the entire summer camp, and we're trying to figure out how defenses are supposed to guard this offense, right? Mm-hmm. And then you look in the games at Kentucky, LSU, and Florida, and for some reason, the force feeding to Trey Harris ultimately costs Ole Miss. So you hope that, you know, a similar situation doesn't occur in this with a similar type talent. I mean, the talent level of this room is unbelievable.
Well, I think, and let me add a point right there. I think that had a big sequence, like we just talked about the running back room. The running back room struggled so much they couldn't rely on the running game, so they had to force feed Trey here sometimes, or they had
True.
to kind of go in a diversion in the passing game so much because they weren't able to rely on the running room. So
Yeah.
I think if we have a little bit of better of a running game this year, then that offense, the passing game will be able to be a little bit more open instead of force feeding one guy this year.
100%. And the last thing I want to touch on here is Caleb Odom. Look, obviously almost signed with Ole Miss out of high school, but this is a kid, and he said it in his press conference. He thinks he's playing for Nick Saban. He shows up.
Yeah.
Kalen DeBoer takes over, and he still rides it out with the Alabama Crimson Tide. So for him to be in red and blue, I mean, you said it, but he sounds refreshed. He looks refreshed and really, really good and polished out there. Want to move in briefly. We'll touch on the offensive line here. This is slowly a work in progress. One of the key guys who isn't even a player is James Craig, who's an analyst. He worked with the 2019 LSU team. He's got decades of experience in the NFL. And the only reason he's coaching here is because his daughter goes to school here. So shout out to the sorority rush here at Ole Miss, who are just recruiting these incredible NFL coaches' daughters. I mean, Landry Kiffin, James Craig's daughters now. It's awesome. It's working out great for the football program. But I think having another veteran coach in there can't hurt, right? I mean, these analysts that Lane Kiffin brings in, the amount of NFL experience in this room and in Oxford right now is unbelievable. But just some guys quickly. Jaden Williams probably going to start at that tackle spot. Diego Pounds at the other tackle spot. Bryson Sanders seems like a lock at center, which is really good for him, another guy who's stayed around. I think he was in the 2023 recruiting class, so he's definitely earned his stripes here. And then at those guard spots, it seems like we got some competition between Delano Townsend, PJ Wilkins, obviously Patrick Kudus, and then John Wayne Oliver and Cam East are looking at more of those depth roles. But it's going to be interesting for me to see who rolls out there and how much are they rotating, because we've seen Lane rotate offensive linemen throughout the game, really. And does that have an effect on communication? Is that going to screw some things up? Is it going to help Austin? Is it going to help him stay fresh? I don't know, but we've seen, man, if you don't have a good, set, strong offensive line, it's going to cause a lot of problems, especially for a first-year quarterback in Austin Simmons.
Yeah, for me, again, this quarterback room and this offensive line room were kind of the biggest question mark so far. And you and I talked about this a lot, but I think from the media perspective, for people covering Ole Miss from the national media perspective, this offensive line really wasn't talked about that much. But you and I mentioned it a lot last year. Look, the best ability is availability, and I think last year this offensive line just simply didn't have that. I think Jaden Williams is a key piece for this offense. He missed, I believe, maybe played the first 2 games of the regular season last year and then missed the entire season. Reese McIntyre, those guys missed a lot of games at the offensive line position as well. This offensive line, number one, has to be healthy. And right now we're seeing a collection of guys that seem to be healthy, but they're going to need to be available in the fall for this Ole Miss team to be successful. John Garrison and myself, I believe that he's under a lot of pressure as well. I think that you look back at his tenure year, last year wasn't the best, and then you look back at that 2023 season, they struggled those first couple of games as well, and kind of picked it up later on throughout the season. But he has a big target on his back. I think that you look at what Ole Miss did this past season, they realized they had to get stronger in the trenches, the offensive line, the defensive line. And I'm not going to blame what happened last year all on John Garrison again. Had a lot of injuries on that line, a lot of guys that had never really played in this role and played in this conference that were on that line. But he has to also take some type of accountability. And I think that this year is big for him as well. We've seen a lot of moving pieces. You mentioned Jaden Williams, who looks slimmer and he looks a little bit more athletic right now, but I'm excited to see him back on the field. For a vet now, a senior here now, which is crazy to think. But there are a lot of guys, like you said, Delano Townsend, who I think has the ability to be really good. PJ has the ability to be really good. But what matters most to this offensive line? And I think it's a step-by-step process for John Garrison at this point. And I think it's a one day at a time. Control what you can control. And I think for now is how do we work on the small mechanics? How do we work on the pass blocking? Then how do we work on the run blocking? Then how do we work on the end zone blocking? Then how do we, work on the screen passes, whatever it is. I don't want this offensive line to get overwhelmed with the capabilities that are outside of them, because right now you can't move your offense without a good offensive line. And right now, we have a lot of moving pieces, a lot of new pieces, a lot of questionable pieces that right now truly need to just take some time outside of the game and build a relationship and build connections and have a great chemistry. So when they're on that field, it feels like a little bit more bond and easier to reconcile with.
1000%. And the last thing I want to say here is I want to say it was 1 or 2 days ago, but Therese Davis, he was a Maryland transfer. He committed to Ole Miss, played 10 games as a true freshman. He's got 3 years of eligibility, and you better believe that he will come in and compete for a starting tackle job against Jaden Williams or Diego Pounds, or if one of them gets hurt, because that seems to be a common trend, unfortunately, in their careers. But a really great addition for John Garrison. So credit to him. We got to see how that goes through with the season, obviously, but it's never bad to add any sort of depth or competition. I'm going to take us into the defensive side of the ball here, just flip it over to the D-line. Another situation similar to the wide receivers where you're losing a lot of NFL talent. Not only talent, but leadership, Daylan. So JJ Pegues, Jared Ivey, those glue guys, and then your guys, Walter Nolan, Umad Mielen, who come in and are going to be first and second round picks. Lot of moving pieces there. So obviously you got Suntarian Perkins. He's probably going to hold down that edge spot. Deshaun Womack, the LSU transfers, look good on the edge. And Cam Franklin too. We've seen Prince Will Umad Mielen in that edge linebacker slot. And then up the middle, it's looking like Xavion Harris, Jamarius Brown, Will Eccles, Cam Beavers, Jeffrey Rush. They might go add another part in the transfer portal, maybe a depth piece, but it's going to take a lot to replace the production of last year. But I will say that the young talent and the amount of presence that needs to be developed throughout this line definitely has the potential to ruin some games for the opposing offenses. Just my thoughts. I'm ready to hear yours, though, as well, Dallin.
I think for me, this was I've said the O-line, the quarterback room had the biggest question marks. This was the most intriguing room for me. Like you said, we lost so much, but we also have returning some key pieces. I know that, Cam Franklin and Will Eccles didn't play hardly at all last year, but they were here. And they were here to learn, experience, listen to guys that are now going to be, day 1, day 2, day 3 NFL draft picks. And I think that's huge. I think you and Cam got a chance to go sit down with Will Eccles, go check out that interview, guys. It was great. But I get a bit of JJ Pegues from him. And when I say that, I don't mean his play style, but I mean just this, cool, calm, collected, kind of energy guy that, brings a bit of positivity to the locker room. And I think that's needed, especially in that D-line room that I feel like is going to have a lot of pressure on them to replicate what Ole Miss fans saw last year. So I'm excited about him. Suntarian Perkins, who's, dealt with some injuries throughout spring ball, but don't worry about him. He's shown what his capabilities can do. But the D-line being good is also going to rely on how good he's going to be. He can't get to the quarterback when, O-lines are being able to spy or focus on him because, they're not worried about other D-linemen. But I think he's going to be just fine. His speed and capabilities are going to be really well for this defensive team. And for me, Cam Franklin has the ability to be a superstar. We've watched his mechanics. We've watched his handwork. We've watched his feet work. We've watched his, the ability to transition from different positions on that D line so far in spring, and he looks really, really good. But again, like I talked about, earlier with the wide receiver room, it looks good now. But how does it look on Saturdays? And which is going to be huge. But I'm not concerned. And for this D line room, I think it's a lot of people are just kind of questioning them all. I think that I wish we could have saw a little bit more, true contact and true game experience throughout the spring for this D-line. Prince Will looks good, but I don't think we really got to see him in a true experience mode and what his real capabilities are. So I'm kind of waiting to see how good and elusive and explosive he can be off the line that will allow other guys like Womack and Chambers to blitz in and help out that D-line and get sacks. But I think this is a room that it does not need to be concerned for Ole Miss fans. I think that they've recruited at another high level for that position, and like you said, I think they will go get another piece from the transfer portal. I think that one more kind of experienced guy on that line will help out the little bit of jitters and a little bit of cold hands for those young guys that have not seen too much play time in this conference or in college football in general, which is going to be huge. moving forward to those games where we see Ole Miss sees a lot of quarterbacks this year that have the ability to be mobile and move outside the pocket and play around with their feet work. So how does a defensive line contain those quarterbacks? Had to get an experience of guys that are, very flexible and are, unique at doing a lot of different things. So this defensive line and Randall Joyner has done a really good job this year and developing these young guys. So I'm excited, but I'm also, intrigued in the same way to see how good this D line can be. Because I think for me, they don't have to be as great as they were last year. It's not going to happen simply, but they just have to be good. And I think they have the ability to do that. But now it's going to rely on other positions of the defense to move forward and get better as well.
And one of those pieces working directly behind the defensive linemen are the linebackers. And you'll see guys like Perkins, Unuma, and Mielen kind of rotating in and out of there.
Yeah.
But for the most part, those Mike middle linebackers, they're going to have TJ Dottery running the show. He was the one with the helmet communication last year. A lot of people think it was Pooh Paul, but it actually was Dottery, surprisingly enough. So he's going to be really comfortable in that role again. Looking forward to that. And then guys like Tyler Banks will probably get their shot, who've been basically waiting their whole career at Ole Miss. So really happy for Tyler. Andrew Jones is a Grambling transfer. We've kind of seen a similar presence of Pooh Paul, I want to say. I'm not comparing them by any means, but the dude's fast, physical, and he gets downhill quickly. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see number 12 making a lot of plays on the field this fall. And then to wrap it up here, Taj Chambers and Jaden Yates, 2 transfers coming in who you'll probably see come off the edges as well. But 2 guys who can also work in that outside linebacker role. This is one of the rooms where I'm not as concerned, Daylan. I feel like there's a lot less question marks. To have a veteran like TJ Dottery be able to run the show there and also set the defense and have experience with, the headset and the mic, whatever the case may be, I think they're going to be fine. But ultimately, I think they have depth as well. I'm really high on this linebacker room personally.
Me too, man. Like you said, this is the portion of the defense, maybe the entire team that I'm kind of least concerned about, if that makes sense. Maybe other than the wide receiver room. I very in awe of TJ Dottery. I remember he came in during that Peach Bowl in 2023. We really had not seen him at all, if any, that year, and just took over. I mean, his ability in the zone defense to fly across the defense, communicate really well was obvious in that Peach Bowl, and it continued in 2024 for Ole Miss. His vocal leadership, his ability to play in different positions and read the defense and kind of fly from one side of the end zone, one side of the sideline to the other has been really big. You mentioned Andrew Jones, who I'm really high on. Kind of the comparison of Pooh Paul is just a size comparison for definitely. I think Andrew's like 6'2", 200. He's a guy that wants to rip the opposing offense's heads off. If a running back's coming at him, he wants to initiate all the contact and put him on the ground. If he's diving and running towards the quarterback for a sack, he wants to put the quarterback down. And that's a guy you hates on the opposing team, but you love when he's on your team. And I'm really excited about Andrew Jones. He's hungry. Ole Miss recruited him really, really hard out of the portal because, if I'm not mistaken, he originally was committed to South Carolina, then flipped to Ole Miss. So he has the capabilities to be really, really special. You mentioned, Chambers and, these other guys that were flexible out this linebacker room. This is a room that has exceeded really well under Pete Golding since he's been here. I think this is room that is going to exceed again. And it takes everyone, and I think they have everyone that is going to be able to buy in on that linebacker room. This is the portion that last year I was also saying that how do they avoid missing a lot of those open field tackles, though? And this in the secondary improved a lot in 2024, but still saw a lot of misuse in open field tackling. So how can they improve on that is going to be my biggest key. But throughout the spring, this linebacker room has looked really well. They seem to be in good size, seem to move really well. You talked about Tyler Banks, who, fans kind of saw him get a big interception and pick 6 earlier in spring ball. I'm super happy for him. He's another guy that's really built and has a good stature on him that can, play down low and stop the run game, can kind of sit back in zone coverage, has great hands to get an interception, a very vocal leader as well because he's been here for a few years, has never really gotten a chance to play too much, but understands the playbook, understands what Pete Golding wants him to do and wants this defense to do. So I'm excited about Tyler. He's really hungry, a guy that I think can be a really big playmaking guy and can change the landscape of this defense for Ole Miss in 2025. So Andrew Jones and Tyler Banks are 2 guys that I would really say stand out so far for this team, but especially for this linebacking room.
And Jones, I think he's a guy who can really fly under the radar, similar again to Pooh Paul. Like if you remember last year, people were not really talking about Pooh Paul before the season. We knew he was this good Arkansas transfer who came in, But then once, you go to the Vaught and you see this guy live and the energy and overall aura that comes with it, it's like, damn, this dude can play. So I'm kind of expecting something like that out of Jones. Love the energy, the enthusiasm from him. And then probably the part of the team, Lane Kiffin's talked about it with the most question marks.
Yeah.
The most concerns right now is the secondary, Daylan. And I want to start by saying this. Look, the wide receivers, the quarterback room, the offense in general has looked great. But let's take this with a grain of salt, considering the secondary is not where it's going to be when the fall comes around. And
Yeah.
it's not a shot. But look, guys like Jalen Braxton, I talked to him the other day. He's recovering from an injury. He was supposed to come here and be DB1 or 2 from Arkansas, but he had surgery, so he's going to come back in 2 or 3 months here. And then Sage Ryan from LSU is kind of in that safety spot. TJ Banks is a true sophomore. They got him lining up against these all-star freakish wide receivers. And also Cedric Beavers, who missed last year because of an injury, but it was originally a junior college transfer. He's also lining up against guys like Trey Wallace and Deuce Alexander. And the matchups, when you have Austin Simmons throwing you the ball and it's your first time going against that and these really experienced, deep, versatile wide receivers, it's not quite fair. And it sounds ridiculous saying that, but these are guys who lack overall experience, not only in the SEC, but at the Division I level, Daylan. But I will say, to Coach Brian Brown and Pete Golding, and to their credit, they went and have started getting some more portal pieces.
Yeah.
We saw the first one land. It was the Clemson transfer, Devoy Fegan. Hope I'm saying that correctly, but really high ceiling, 4 years of eligibility. I want to say he redshirted last year, appeared in a couple games at Clemson, but good size, and it was a great high school recruit. And then the one I'm really stoked about here is Ricky Fletcher. He's from Durant, Mississippi, played at South Alabama. Didn't play last year due to an injury, but the year before, dude was an absolute menace. He's 6'3", great length, great size. And then the last name I'll touch on before I hand it over to Daylan is a guy really keep your eyes on here. It's Zaquan Patterson. He's a Miami DB. He went to Chaminade Madonna, which is where Jeremiah Smith went. So they were teammates. He went against Jeremiah Smith every single day. I want to say he played in nearly all of Miami's games as a true freshman. So this is the guy who's probably going to come in and be DB1 if Ole Miss can land him. It's going to be really, really big for them to try and outbid Florida here. It's going to be interesting, but definitely keep your eyes peeled for the remainder of the week on his recruitment. But all in all, man, holes to be filled. A lot of places that need answers, really. And unfortunately, it feels like even last year when the DB room was full of all this talent, at times there were holes like you saw against LSU, like you saw what DJ Lagway did. So you need the talent. You need some guys to start stepping up here. I think that will happen when you get more guys off the portal. But again, we're going to have to see. We keep coming back to this. The main theme of the podcast is a lot of these hypothetical questions are going to be answered when the ball actually snaps in SEC play. But obviously ways away, just trying to give you guys some insight. What are your thoughts on the secondary? What changes need to be made? And what can these guys do to prepare themselves for this fall?
You made a lot of great points, man. This is the part of the defense that I talked about so much last year that did really good last year. Don't get me wrong, but you talked about such an elite defense. That pass defense struggled a lot last year, whether it was against Mississippi State, Florida, LSU. You watch Jackson Arnold kind of do some things against when Oklahoma was down in town. So this was a pass defense that played really good, but also struggled in key components, especially in the last 2 minutes of games a lot. This secondary and what I'm watching so far from them and West Neighbors, I'm not necessarily concerned about their abilities. I think I'm more concerned about just the lack of size. You're not going to see too many guys that are, 6'2", 6'3" in the secondary, but I think we see so many guys lack thereof in that position for this Ole Miss team currently. It kind of concerns me. And, I think it's a good and bad thing, but I think it's a good thing because it gives a little bit of speed and elusiveness to the secondary that maybe we haven't seen before. But as well, I'm watching this secondary in, coverages against this wide receiver room right now. And they're struggling, size-wise. And they're struggling in the red zone because they're just simply getting caught. The ball is getting caught over their heads. And that could make them good when the season starts, but you also can't game plan for a play breaking down. The quarterback gets out of the pocket and then throws on the run. You can't build on those plays and practices in terms of real game ability. This secondary has a lot of pieces to fill. I think Pete Golding is understanding that. But for me, the big thing is removing the big play ability. It happened way too much for Ole Miss last year, and right now I'm personally not seeing that so far throughout spring ball this so far. And I don't want to say that as to be over concerned for fans, but we're here to keep it honest, and we're here to talk about what we've saw some for. There's a lot of great pieces that are coming in, like Fegan from Clemson that Zach mentioned, and Ricky Fletcher from South Alabama, who I'm really high on. This who has a great capability to do a lot of different things when he's healthy. This secondary has a lot of work to do, to be honest. I think that they can help out in the run game if they're healthy. I think they can be explosive in the short game, passing situations when they're healthy. But they have to figure out who is going to be the guys that start. And I don't think they know that so far. It's obviously still spring, so I'm not going to get too ahead of myself there. But I think other positions in this defense and even the entire team know, these are my group. These are my guys that I'm going to put out there to start. I don't think we know that from the secondary so far. And I think that's something that's going to have to continue throughout the rest of the summer and in those fall camps. But for me, and don't get me wrong, I understand why this team did not do a spring game this year, but I think that this portion of the team is going to benefit the most in terms of bad from not having a spring game. I really think they needed that. I think the secondary needed some real-time game experience out there, especially against this group of wide receivers. That's a good thing for this secondary to be playing against a group of wide receivers that have speed, size, great catching abilities. But they weren't really able to see that in full motion so far. So that's my concerning part. I don't want to, get too over accustomed with it. But there's some holes to fill for sure. And I think that if they can fill those holes and just manage the game, don't have to be, spectacular, superstars. Manage the game. Keep the ball in front of you, remove the big plays when necessary, and limit the penalties. That's something that this defense and that secondary struggled a lot with in 2024 was the penalties. But that's also my big concern with this group right now. We have a lot of guys that are new, a lot of guys that are transfers, a lot of new recruits that haven't been here, haven't played this defense, haven't seen the experience of the teams and the quarterbacks that Ole Miss is going to see in 2025. And it's easy to go out there and commit those penalties. So a lot of work to do. And I think for fans moving forward, this is the position that you kind of want to keep the most eye on in terms of, okay, what can we expect? But I think that Wes Neighbors and Pete Golding have been here a few years now, understand what they have to do to get the job done. And I think that they're going to figure it out. It's just going to take a little bit of more time.
Yeah, whether it's adding more portal pieces or even benching a couple players or two, you better believe that Lane Kiffin and Pete Golding are going to get their guys who they believe can compete and make a difference in SEC ball games in the secondary. Obviously, it's probably the weakest position right now, but you can expect that to change and have these guys be ready when they come back to fall camp. It's going to be a much different look. We're going to be shooting the same podcast talking about probably guys who we haven't even mentioned once.
Yeah.
So things are going to change. It's fluid. That's just the state of college football. Before we wrap up here, Daylan, anything else you got for us, man?
Special teams look pretty good too, man. And we don't have to go
right.
into it, but I think that was another big question mark in terms of kickoff returns. Who's going to be the new kicker? Who's going to be the new punter? The special teams just look really, really good. I think that's a portion that obviously you don't get too much hyped up about with the Lane Kiffin team, but when this time matters, I think we have a reliant punter. I think we have a reliant kicker. I think we have a relying punt and return game right now. I think that's a piece that obviously gets force-shaded in football, but I think can really put Ole Miss in some good positions in 2025 when they utilize it correctly.
Yeah, you look at that Florida game, boom, drop punt changes everything. So it does matter. It sounds silly. Credit to you for bringing all that stuff up, Daylan, but it's very important. That's all we got for you guys today. Again, subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe to Daylan. He's doing his own stuff over at the Daylan Show on his personal channel. Be sure to follow us on social media, The Rebel Walk. A lot more transfer portal stuff coming your way. I mentioned it at the beginning, but some NFL draft content coming too here. I believe the draft starts Friday. So be sure to stay tuned to therebelwalk.com for all your Ole Miss sports needs.